This is a relief for people who live in a Virginia Beach neighborhood devastated by flooding during Hurricane Matthew.
Windsor Woods is getting some much-needed repairs. Tonight, City Council voted to use millions in FEMA funding to improve the drainage. Robert Boyd has the story.
Well, I'm at Palace Green Boulevard and South Plaza Trail, and if I was standing in this exact same spot during Hurricane Matthew, I would be waist deep in water. And that's something that the city, with the help of FEMA, wants to make sure never happens again. And residents who live around here say it's about time they get some relief.
I mean, there was a Jeep across the street that was up to the halfway up the windshield.
Justin and Caleb remember Hurricane Matthew like it was yesterday. They were trapped inside their home for days as streets turned to rivers.
You'd expect the storm drain, there'd be some kind of drainage that'd get it out eventually, but I mean, it seemed like it wasn't going anywhere.
Jack Hauser has lived in Windsor Woods for 35 years. He says flooding has always been an issue way before Matthew.
Anytime we have 2 or 3 inches of rain, there's going to be flooding over here. And that's just plain and simple. When you get up to 4 or 5 inches, then you almost need a boat to get out of here.
City Councilman John Moss said improving the Windsor Woods drainage system has always been the city's #1 priority. But residents were getting tired of waiting, some even moving away.
Drastic for this neighborhood. I mean, someone has to get up and move just because of drainage.
Then Tuesday, these residents' greatest concerns were finally answered. FEMA will be reimbursing the city $5.3 million for hurricane cleanup costs. And in turn, City Council voted to use that money to pay for pipe replacements in 3 areas of Windsor Woods.
It certainly means now that when they heard it's going to rain 2 or 3 inches, they won't think, oh goodness, my house is going to flood. You know, and I'm sure that's a concern. So we're going to be moving that water off the street faster.
Residents say it's nice to know they weren't forgotten.
Especially the older people that have trouble driving, and especially getting in and out of the neighborhood.
Virginia Beach City Council is optimistic that all of these projects could be complete within the next 2 years. In Windsor Woods, Robert Boyd, 13 News Now.
More big plans for the Virginia Beach Oceanfront. This time, the proposals are for a sports center. The indoor facility would be built on 19th Street, not far from the convention center. The plan is to build basketball courts, volleyball courts, and bleachers for at least 3,000 people. At tonight's City Council meeting, the public got to see the top proposals and give some input. No one spoke out against the project. Many supporters did show up. They say this is a perfect chance to boost tourism during the off-season.
It's an opportunity to bring together the local community, tourists, visitors to our beaches, to our oceanfront in typical non-tourist season. Sports that are going to be played at this sports center are typically held in winter months. So this is a great opportunity for our hotels, our restaurants to pick up additional revenue dollars.
City Council is scheduled to vote on the proposals on February 20th.
One man is dead tonight and another is in custody after a shooting in the Campostella section of Norfolk. It happened just after 8 o'clock on Ollinger Street. Officers arrived and found one man who had been shot. Medics pronounced him dead on the scene. Another man was taken into police custody. Detectives questioned him at the police station. We have not learned yet whether he will be charged. Police are classifying this as a homicide investigation.
The highest bidder can have a piece of American history. A museum in Portsmouth is auctioning off an original letter written by Alexander Hamilton.
Now, the auction is in Falls Church, but the Portsmouth Historical Association hopes the money from this can be used locally. Chanu Hur explains.
The Hill House Museum is a part of Portsmouth history, and right now it's going through some renovations. To help cover some of the costs, a piece of American history, a letter written and signed by Alexander Hamilton, is going to auction. Everything is original, from the decor to the dining set to the furniture. The Hill House has sat next to the Portsmouth waterfront since the 1800s. Today, it's a museum open to the public 1 day a week and currently going through a restoration.
Walls need to be replastered, we have to have furniture restored, we have to have floors. It's in pretty need of some TLCs.
All of that work, David writes, is estimating could be about $100,000. He's the president of the Portsmouth Historical Association based at the Hill House Museum.
We need to make sure that we get that.
Among all of the original property of the Hill family, a letter written by one of America's founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton. An appraiser has authenticated the letter and Hamilton's signature dating back to 1794.
It was like an amazing day. It was like really cool to know that actually I'm holding a letter written by a man who put this pen in his hand and wrote this letter.
With that squared away, the Portsmouth Historical Association is hoping this piece of American history can help them restore part of the local history by auctioning it off and using the money towards the current projects.
We're hoping that it will go for $11,000, if not more, depending on the interest that it attracts.
With the success Hamilton has seen on Broadway, he's hoping this letter will appeal to history lovers like himself.
It's something that you're holding in your hands that not many people could have.
In Portsmouth, Chinu Her, 13 News Now.
Fantastic story there. We're told the bulk of the money for the restoration will come from memberships, donations, and other events, and the museum will remain open during the renovations.
Another government shutdown seems a bit less likely tonight. The House has passed a short-term spending measure that would keep the government open through March 23rd. Meanwhile, the Senate appears to be closing in on a long-term agreement ahead of Thursday's midnight deadline. However, earlier today, President Trump threatened another shutdown over the immigration debate. The broader agreement would award major increases to the military and disaster relief. 3rd District Congressman Bobby Scott released a statement after the House approved the 5th continuing resolution. He says we are still debating a budget that should have been finalized 5 months ago. It is time for the Republican majority to reach across the aisle to Democrats so that we can work together on a long-term budget deal. The U.S. Supreme Court has rejected some of the redrawn legislative districts in North Carolina. Federal judges had about 24 districts changed after deciding the boundaries were racially biased. Republican lawmakers argue that the maps are legal and don't need to be changed. Supreme Court justices blocked the changes made around Charlotte and Raleigh, but decided the other redrawn districts must be used.
Tonight, we are hearing from a local man who survived an Amtrak train collision in South Carolina. Matthew Cheeseman is the superintendent of schools in Perquimans County. He was traveling with his wife and daughter over the weekend when their train collided with a freight train. 2 people, the train conductor and engineer, were killed. Investigators say a switch was in the wrong position, diverting the Amtrak train onto a side track where the freight train was parked. Cheeseman says it all happened so fast.
But I think in the middle of it all, my daughter and I were on the floor underneath things. I mean, you clearly understand there's been a devastating impact. I just remember trying to get out from under some things and just trying to check yourself like, wow, that really did just happen.
More than 100 people were injured. Cheeseman says he and his family are very sore, but they're okay. The NTSB will be on the scene for the rest of the week to continue their investigation. A surprising turn of events in an Amtrak derailment that happened in Philadelphia back in 2015. A judge reinstated involuntary manslaughter and reckless endangerment charges against the Amtrak engineer, ordering the engineer to stand trial. A different judge had thrown out the charges last year, saying the evidence showed the derailment was an accident. But prosecutors appealed, and today a judge ruled that the first judge had made a mistake. 8 people died when the train headed from Washington to New York rounded a curve at more than twice the speed limit and went off the tracks. Federal investigators say the engineer was distracted and lost his bearings.
How would you feel about sharing the roads with bigger, heavier trucks? That's the focus of 2 proposed bills right now. One would permit trucks with 6 axles to carry up to 91,000 pounds on interstates. The current limit is 80,000 pounds for 5-axle trucks. The legislation is getting some pushback, some saying the heavy trucks are dangerous to other drivers and also damage roads. Drivers we talked to were on both sides of the idea.
Study after study shows that these trucks are far too dangerous, especially on East Coast busy, congested interstates and local roads.
I think our trucking is regulated, and I don't feel like it's imposing any undue safety issues.
These bills still have to pass the committee level before they can advance and be considered by the Senate.
A stunning success for SpaceX. Its new rocket blasted off today on its first test flight, launching a red sports car into orbit.
3, 2.
The most powerful rocket in the world launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The Falcon Heavy spacecraft was made not by NASA but by billionaire Elon Musk. Musk put his own personal touch inside the rocket, a roadster made by his other company, Tesla. A mannequin is strapped into the driver's seat. This rocket means heavier cargo can be carried into space. It is one step closer to the SpaceX dream of building a colony on Mars.